Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. Hari Om, friends. We are in the middle of the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. The 9th chapter, at this stage, Krishna is trying to make us more sensitive to the presence of godliness all around us, because the next chapter is about Vibhuti Yoga, and after that it is Vishwarupa Ishvara Darshanam. So the more we become sensitive to godliness all around us, it becomes easy to see Vishwarupa Ishvara Darshana. And this also brings about a greater level of bhakti. It is in this chapter more than anywhere else, more than the 12th chapter, which is titled Bhakti Yoga, that we have some of the best verses like Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam Yat Karoshi Yatasnasi. All these verses come in this chapter. It is a great opportunity for all of us to systematically study the Bhagavad Gita, the rate at 4 verses per day, so that we will be able to get a good idea. So sometimes as we going along, the commitment comes down, so we need to re-motivate ourselves. It's a great opportunity. Dr. Sundar, please explain verse 19. Your time starts.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Krishna starts the Madhyama Shatakam with a promise that he will reveal God. He does this through a method which is called as Tatastha Lakshanam. He says Ishvara is Jagat Karanam. In these sections, Brahman is being described as Paraprakriti. This Paraprakriti has got a power or Shakti rooted on it, dependent on it, which is called as Maya or Aparaprakriti. Paraprakriti through Aparaprakriti becomes what we see everything around us as this creation. Having revealed this much, Krishna does a startling revelation and says that the cause of samsara is this Aparaprakriti, which is very
Hello? Sundar?
Did we lose you, Dr. Sundar?
I think so.
Yeah.
We'll give a moment. If not, we will go to the next speaker. There may be an internet issue, I think. We may have to come back to Dr. Sundar. Dr. Kiran, are you ready?
Yes, I am there.
Okay, we'll go back to Dr. Sundar after you have done.
Yeah. Hari Om.
You.
Traividya mam somapa puta papa yajnairishta swargatim prartayante te punyamasadya surendra lokam ashnanti divyan divi deva bhoga. Those who know the 3 Vedas, who perform rituals in which Soma is offered and thereby purified of their papas and have propitiated me with their rituals, they pray to go to heaven, gaining the world of Indra, which is the result of their punyas. They enjoy the heavenly
Audio
enjoyment.
absolutely not clear.
Audio not clear?
Clear.
Hello?
It's clear, quite.
Kiran, very
it clear?
clear. Go ahead.
Yeah.
It's okay, sir.
Yeah. Knower of Brahman becomes Brahman, but knower of Vedas do not become Gnani. Previous verses dealt with bhakti as a means of moksha. Here onwards, Lord Krishna talks about Sakama Bhakti and its drawbacks. 3 futilities affect human beings. 1 is futile action or futile karma. Through karma, we are capable of attaining purification, but we prefer to indulge in selfish actions. Futile gnana or knowledge. Through right knowledge, we can attain the God, but we indulge in worldly activities and sometimes even Vedas we use for material benefits. And third is futile desire, which is also called as asha or sankalpa here. And when we have option of choosing Shreyas as the ultimate, we desire for prayers and ask God using above for worldly things, when we can with one stroke burn off all the things and achieve the ultimate. The root cause of this is lack of Shraddha in God. Bhakti is often misunderstood. That is why Krishna starts talking about Bhakti after first 6 chapters or the first Chatkam. Even in second chapter, which is a main teaching, hardly Bhakti is touched upon. Just correct me, sir, if I am wrong. Only in 18th chapter, Krishna reaches the ultimate in the Bhakti when he tells Sarva Dharman Paritejya Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. So here he reveals ultimately what the Bhakti means. There is a mullah story. Once mullah was standing by this house which was on fire, and he was folding his hands and standing. And his friend came and say, "Hey, what happened? You are just standing here." And he goes to take water and goes to douse it. And suddenly mullah stops him and says, "No, wait. I'm waiting for the God to come and quench douse this fire. Have prayed for him, and have every day I've offered namaz, and this time we will decide whether God is there or not." This story, even though it looks very silly, this is what most of the time we will be doing. We tell God, "Give me that, give me this, and if you don't give, I did so much, and why this unhappiness came and all those things." And as if we know what is needed, and we want God just to keep on satisfying it. And here we should take an opportunity to be very clear about what bhakti is, because here he stresses a lot. First, let us know what bhakti is not. All learning of Vedas here means karma kanda. Here karma or upasana kanda. That's what here yajna means many rituals. It falls under karma. It is not even upasana. As long as we are using for the worldly desires or any desire for that matter, we should be clear that we are in the realm of samsara or karma upasana only, and we should not get confused with the bhakti. And this karma upasana can lead to purification, but ultimately most of the time it strengthens our ego. Any knowledge without surrendering to God, even if it is Upanishads, will not achieve its spiritual objective and cannot be called Paravidya or Moksha Shastra. Desire for worldly things is called Asha. And once we attain some stage, our desire extends beyond this, and we want celestial pleasures. This is called as Sankalpa, which we commonly do during Yajna. Once we have to what is the Sankalpa you take, and most often we say we want Swarga, etc. This we should know is also a form of Manda Bhakti or lower form of Bhakti. Actually, this is more difficult to overcome, like a golden chain, which Sir often compares. And this is what is referred in Ishavasya Upanishad as blinding darkness, which Upasana leads to. Mind always thinks in opposites, past, future, bad, good, birth, death, etc. It never accepts present. This extreme form of bad is Patala Loka, and extreme form of joy or pleasure is heaven. When all the pleasures are expanded, where all the pleasures are expanded multifold. Mind, as we know, is the realm of creation, which is under Maya. So everything which is associated with mind is temporary. And Bhoga, which we say here heavenly Bhoga, which Daivi Bhoga, they say Divyan Bhoga, is experiential and cannot be permanent. All this is in future and we can never see. Lord Krishna asks us to move beyond this duality created mind and accept both birth, death, joy, suffering as two sides of the same coin. Just like baby who feeds on mother's milk without asking whether it is good or bad, nutritious or not, let us have Shraddha and surrender to God, whom we can't miss even for a moment. Once a Sufi saint was there. He never went to offer prayer or namaz. Once a Maulvi came and asked him why he doesn't go. So he says, "I've always been in the God's prayer, God's feeling that I have never missed him. I have never missed his gratitude. I feel that someday if I go to offer prayer, sometimes I may lose touch with him." So this is how we should be. And reaching him should be our ultimate and only objective. Param says, as love for end is superior to means, and love for oneself is superior to love for end, as end is for oneself only. So this, I think, Sir will unravel it. So when all end or desire is surrendered at the feet of the Lord, he will take care. That is his promise. Yoga Kshema Mahamyam, which he will explain in the Lord later. Here, when God is the only goal, he reveals as self. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiran. Nice explanation of an important verse. Dr. Sundar, are you back?
Sundar is back, sir. Sundar is back.
Okay, we go back
Sorry,
to
sir, there was a drop in the internet.
1 second. I will get the verse back. You can begin. You can begin.
So Krishna reveals God in the Madhyama Shatakam as Jagat Karanam. So the Para Prakriti as well as the Apara Prakriti together manifest whatever is there, the creation, what we call as. Then in this verse 7:13, Tribir Gunamayer Bhaveri Ebi Sarvamidam Jagat Mohitam Nabi Janati Ma Mebya Param Avyayam. So the revelation made is that the Apara Prakriti is like a Mohini. Because of the multitude, the variety, the colors, the forms, one gets lost in the Apara Prakriti. And the diagnosis of samsara is due to this not being able to focus on Para Prakriti. And even if we are able to focus on Para Prakriti, not being able to abide in Para Prakriti continuously, Krishna makes the diagnosis of samsara. In the very next verse, 7:14, Daivi hesa gunamai mama maya duratyaya mameva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. So he brings in bhakti as the solution for this problem. He goes on to classify bhakti in 4 types: artha, artharthi, jijnasu, jnani. Lot of discussion in 7th chapter. The conceptual object of worship in each of these groups is different. In the case of arthartharthi bhakti, he is viewing the object of worship as the Saguna Rupa Ishvara, the Eka Rupa Ishvara. Whereas the Jnani Bhakta worship is towards Nirguna Swarupa Ishvara or Nirguna Brahman. Now, which among these two is correct? So in the verse which was dealt with in the last week, Avajananti Mam Mudha Manushim Tanu Mashritam. So here Krishna clearly says, in fact, he derides and calls them as Mudaha, those who take to Ekarupa Ishvara Bhakti and do not mature and move beyond that. So Krishna is asking us to move from Ekarupa Ishvara Bhakti to Nirguna Brahma or Nirguna Swarupa Ishvara Bhakti. This is also the theme of Bhajagovindam, to move from Preyas to Shreyas. However, Krishna himself in the 7th chapter says, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanamam Mam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sa Mahatma Sur Durlabha. So the taking to the Nirguna Ishvara Bhakti is not easy. It is going to be difficult. So herein lies the importance of the Aneka Rupa Ishvara Bhakti or the Vishwarupa Ishvara Bhakti. So this Vishwarupa Ishvara Bhakti is being offered by Krishna as a stepping stone to gradually migrate from Ekarupa Ishvara to the Nirguna Brahman. So out of compassion, we have this verse in the 10th verse, Tesam evanukampartam aham ajnanajam tamaha nashayami atma bhavasta jnana deepena bhasvata. He's promising, if you take to Vishwarupa Ishvara Bhakti, I shall enter your mind and light the lamp of knowledge of Advaitam. So that is the importance of Vishwarupa Ishvara Bhakti. So the last 4 verses before this dealt with the Vishwarupa Ishvara. So everything that is manifest in this creation is Vishwarupa Ishvara. So we have seen in the previous verses where he said Omkara is Vishwarupa Ishvara, all the Vedas are Vishwarupa Ishvara, all the rituals are Vishwarupa Ishvara, father, mother, guru, everything that was important in those days, he labels as Vishwarupa Ishvara. In this particular verse, the Vishwarupa Ishvara also comprises of various universal cycles which are run harmoniously by the Vishwarupa Ishvara. So he picks 3 such cycles and describes. In the first and second line, Tapamyaham Aham Varsham. So the reference is made to the sun being the Vishwarupa Ishvara and also the rain being the Vishwarupa Ishvara. Nigrannami Utrajamicha. So as a part of this water cycle, due to the presence of sun, there is evaporation and the same water then is released as rain. This is one of the cycles which is harmoniously run by Vishwarupa Ishvara. Another such cycle is Amrutam Chaiva Mrutyucha, mortality and immortality. Swami Param says if you take it at the finite level, God as a cause of presence or absence of food becomes a cause of mortality and immortality. At the level of a philosophical level, God as a cause of jnanam becomes a cause for mortality or immortality. The third such cycle of universal harmony is Sat Asat. So the reference here of Sat Asat is to manifest and unmanifest creation. So we can take it in terms of Karana Prapancha, moving on to Sukshma Sthula Prapancha, and then coming back to Karana Prapancha. So in other words, everything that is there around is Vishwarupa Ishvara, which is by this famous verse which sir also likes, Matta Parataram Na Kinchidasti Dhananjaya. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sundar. Another good explanation of a verse, which is otherwise looks very simple. We go to the next speaker, Karthik. Your time starts.
Hi. I think we are all familiar with a lot of sayings and things apart from the slokas also. As you sow, so you reap. All of us will definitely get what we want. So be careful in choosing what we want. Choose wisely. Things like that. So this is one exposition of choosing wisely. So especially us being exposed to this Vedanta, choose wisely. And in the two shlokas as explained by Dr. Kiran and me right now, 20 and 21. So we are talking about what happens if you choose anything other than what is actually propounded by Vedas and Vedanta. So, te tam bhuktva swargalokam vishalam kshine punye martyalokam vishanti evam tridharmam anuprapannaha gatagatam kama kama labanthe. So it translates to the people having enjoyed the vast heaven when their punya is exhausted, return to the world of mortals. In this manner, following rituals in the three Vedas, those who are desirous of various ends gain the condition of repeated coming and going. Coming and going. So that is samsara. So, Swargalokam Vishalam. No, see, it is not to be denigrated or, something like that. Swargaloka is also, there is an adjective called Vishalam. So it is vast. There is abundance, there is variety, and there is, even in terms of time, it does not conform to what we generally know as time. We saw a lot earlier as to the different units of time in different lokas. So Swargalokam Vishalam, having enjoyed Bhuktva, this vast Swargaloka with all its pleasures, Swamiji says sense pleasures, when all the punya is exhausted, Kshine Punye, what happens to them? They are simply dropped down and enter the world of mortals. Martya Lokam Vishanti. See, Martya Lokam is not necessarily earth. Okay, it is not, like in that Dhumo shloka in I think previous or something, we saw that he comes back to earth when that Dakshinayana reference was there in that shloka. I'm not able to recollect. So there he necessarily comes back to earth. But here it is just a world of mortals where people die. All the lokas that we know of are this Martya Loka. So depending upon our karma pala, we are put into, or we go, not just return to earth, we go to any loka depending upon karma pala. So these guys, if we realize that, we develop some kind of viveka and vairagya. See, vairagya, as we know, it is not detachment from karma. Then we are plain lazy. Vairagya is actually detachment from karma phala. So, these kind of statements are meant to take us towards ourselves. Shastra always tries to drive us to a corner from where you cannot but seek moksha. So now, coming back to the shloka, the cause for these people going to heaven is punya. So their stay there will last as long as the cause remains. The physical body they enjoy in heaven is earned by previous punya karma, and for every experience they have there, they have to encash some of their punya. With reference to the time frame, Swargaloka is considered relatively eternal. One day of the Devas is much longer than one day here in earth. But it is referential eternality, not timelessness, not moksha. That is why when the punya, the cause for them to go to heaven and enjoy the heavenly enjoyments day after day is exhausted, they come back. And they cannot extend their stay in heaven by doing new karma and gathering new punya and extend their stay. No, it's not possible because there is no doership there. There is only enjoyership. There is only bhoktva. Therefore, they come back. Then, evam trayi dharmam anuprapannaha. Evam means in the manner that was told in the previous sloka. That is doing Vedic rituals like soma and avoiding actions. The three Vedas are called Trayi here, and the word dharma refers to actions within legitimate boundaries. They are not illegitimate. So it's Sakama Bhakta. So, and another word is, Vedas deal with two things, karma, which includes upasana, and gnana. Here Krishna talks only about those who follow the karmas enjoined by the Vedas, not gnana. Now, these people are called kama kamaha. So it refers to the desired object, those who go after desired objects. Kaman kamayanti iti kama kamaha. It does not mean desirers of desires. We do not have desires. Desired desires. We have them already. So kama kamas are those who have desires for various desirable ends, objects, whatever. So Veda talks about a variety of things, but we pursue only what we want according to our viveka. So these people, that is these kama kamas, have shraddha and perform the various karmas mentioned in the three Vedas, but only for various limited means. Now, what do they get out of all those things, efforts? Gatagatam labante. They go and they come back. That is what they gain. It means samsara. So, natu swatantriyam kvachit labante. Nothing they get of freedom. The freedom is not even in the ambit of their what they desire. So they just go punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam helplessly in different lokas. With the help of all, why does this happen? All because they perform all the karmas with kartritva. That is the villain of the piece. With the help of Shastra, I have to give up the notion that I am a karta. That takes place in the wake of knowledge alone. That is moksha. Again, we see here why the desire for freedom, mumuksha is so very important. That's it, Doctor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Karthik. Nice explanation of a very often quoted verse. You brought us a little new insight about Mrityu Lokam. So all lokas are Mrityu Lokam. Dr. Komal, your time starts.
22nd shloka. Ananyaschintayanto mam ye janam paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. Those people who see me as non-different from them offer worship by dwelling on me. I take care of the yoga and kshema of those ever steadfast ones. That's the literal meaning. In the previous two verses, Krishna spoke about Sakama Bhakta or Manda Bhakta, for whom God is only the means and world is the end. This is an important, often quoted verse where Bhagavan talks about the Madhyama Bhakta, the Nishkama Bhakta, for whom God is not a means for other things. God is the means also and the end also. God is the end, and that is the highlight here. So this is the next gear, next level Krishna takes us here. In case of Madhyama Bhakta, he does all the worldly transactions, but absorption into the ultimate is his ultimate goal in life. That is called Bhagavan in Puranic language, that's called Moksha in Vedantic language, that's called Tivra Mumukshatvam in Vedantic language, and that's also called Jignasu Bhakti. Since the end occupies the mind, it is so powerful that it displaces all the other things from the mind. In spite of whatever may be our day-to-day course, like to travel to hospital, operate, see patients, come back, then be with family, talk to them, then whatever the worldly activities. All the time, if your mind is preoccupied with something which is ultimate, which is taken goal, then that is the Tivra Mumukshatvam or Moksha. And what Krishna shows the carrot here is like, for that kind of people, I will take care of their yoga and kshema. And what is this yoga and kshema is a very important two words. It's the symbol of LIC, which we are very well versed with. Yoga kshemam vahamyaham is taken from here. So yoga is about acquiring something which we desire in the worldly pleasures, worldly activities. Yoga is about getting that and acquiring, maybe it is property, or maybe it is child, grandchildren, or a job, or some status in society. That is yoga. And kshema is the other part of it, which will give us the other reason for our fear is not just acquiring something, but to maintain it, to keep it secure. That is praptasya rakshana, protecting whatever we have acquired. So that's preservation of our acquisitions. So we have a security guard, we have bank lockers, we have uh, LIC, for example. Swamiji gives example of LIC. That's why LIC has aptly taken it as Yoga Kshemam Vahamyaham. So these are the two worries of the worldly life is yoga and kshema. So the curious thing here is, like, even though he says for that person for whom he will be steadfast and thinking only about the ultimate goal of Brahman, so he will actually will not require, he will not give so much of significance for yoga and kshema at all. So this is kind of inducing Arjuna to know this knowledge and to open his eyes to this concept in which he would be lured to make sure that his yoga and kshema will be taken care of for those people who will be steadfast in their approach towards the ultimate one. So this is the core meaning of that. Swamiji here makes very clear emphasis on making sure that none of the grihastha will make himself feel that his worldly responsibilities are secondary. Like he gives example of somebody planning to go to Delhi, for example. So to go to Delhi, first you'll have to purchase a ticket, then you'll have to go to the railway station, then you'll have to go to the right platform. There are ways. Like, even though I know Delhi is far north, I may have to go south to first to reach the railway station or to the airport. So there is a way, that's the worldly way in which we have to reach the goal, and that's our responsibility. And Swami Param emphasizes here in repeated terms that we should not neglect our worldly responsibilities in our pursuit and hanging on to this ultimate truth. Eventually it will become, once you reach there, you will reach the ultimate and you will be hanging on to that. Like that will become your core center, and everything revolves around that. So even if you hear a film song, for example, you will be remembering how it relates to being some Brahman taking care of you, or some Brahman which you like so much. So that is Nishkama Bhakti. But in the midst of all this, Grihastha should be always be aware of his responsibilities, and that is taking care, and how to make sure that he is taking care of the responsibilities is to let go of his fear of acquisition and preservation, and believe that that will be taken care by Bhagavan himself if he is steadfast in his goal of keeping the ultimate Brahman as his only goal.
Komal?
That covers, yes, sir. Yeah, that covers most of what Swamiji said, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Komal. Nice explanation. Keywords, as you explained so nicely, Ananya Chintayantoma. So those who always think of their Lord, their yoga and kshema I will take care of. This is the promise of Sri Krishna, a very often quoted verse. Vidya, your time starts.
Thank you, Doctor. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Ye api anya devata bhakta yajante shraddhayanvitaha te api mameva kaunteya yajantya vidhi purvakam. So in the previous verse, Lord Krishna said, the Nishkama Bhaktas are those who worship me, that's Lord Krishna. Now, does that mean that every seeker of moksha should worship Lord Krishna, or does it mean that one should not worship other devatas? People face this difficulty in our religion, whether Shiva is superior or Vishnu or Shakti. Therefore, Lord Krishna wants to clarify this doubt in this verse. 21st verse of the 7th chapter also deals with the same idea, which Viksha elaborated very well in the earlier class. Swami Param here tells that the discussion here is the bhakti of an ajnani who will necessarily have some motive. And based on that motive, bhakti is classified into two. One is called Sakama Bhakti, in which the person or ajnani worships the Lord for the sake of everything else other than God, motivated by the desire for Artha Kama, which is called prayers in Kathopanishad, interested only in materialistic desires. In this verse particularly, Lord Krishna is talking about the Nishkama Bhakti of an Ajnani, not about the Bhakti of a Jnani. Nishkama Bhakti is a Bhakti in which the Bhakta is not interested in anything other than God, and even in that Nishkama Bhakti, there is a motive, and the motive is, oh Lord, I don't want anything other than you. But in Vedanta, Lord is the Lord representing Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. The seeker seeks the infinite Brahman, becoming a Tivra Mumukshu, which is the Nishkama Bhakti of a Jnani. Thus, in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna represents the infinite Lord or Moksha, and all the other gods represent the finite Devatas, representing all the finite goals of life. To quote Swami Chinmayananda in this context, he says, if one wants to build a building, he'll go to the department where there is a man in charge who will allow him to purchase the land. Now, these heads of departments are getting the power from the government, which is the will of the people. Government has given to these various heads of departments, to those who are sitting on these chairs, certain rights and powers. When one goes and invokes them, they are not bringing that power and sanctioning it from their homes. They are sanctioning it as the officers in charge. They have got that power given to them by the government. Similarly, all these mighty powers for these deities are given or allocated to them by the omnipotent, the all-powerful Lord. So he says, instead of worshipping other finite devatas, one can worship Lord Krishna, because all the devatas are included in Lord Krishna by the simple logic that infinite includes all the finite. Therefore, Lord Krishna says any devata a person worships, all those worship will not go to that particular devata, but through that devata, it comes to Lord Krishna alone. Just like a person touches any limb of the Lord, he will not say he's touching the hand or the leg. He will say he's touching the Lord because Lord includes all the limbs. So the point number 1 is to be noted here in this verse is that any worship goes to Lord Krishna. The second point is any result or blessing comes from Lord Krishna alone. Only thing is through that particular devata. Lord Krishna is blessing all the people. Lord receives all the worship through the devatas and blesses all the people through the devatas. So not a direct means, but through an indirect means. The third point to be noted here in this verse is that since all of the devatas represent only the finite powers, by worshipping those devatas, a person can get only finite benefit. Therefore, this comes under Sakama Bhakti. Anya Devata Bhakti means Sakama Bhakti. Therefore, if one wants infinite result, one has to go to Lord Krishna in the context of Bhagavad Gita. Now to come to the verse in proper, Ye api devata bhaktaha means, so there are people who are worshippers of other gods other than me. How do they worship? Shraddhayanvitaha yajante. They are worshipping with faith. Te api mameva kaunteya yajante. Those people are worshipping me alone. But what is the problem? Avidhi purvakam. Avidhi here means ajnanam. They are ignorant of the fact that all the finite devatas are included in the infinite. Lord Krishna, by worshipping Lord, says here, by worshipping Lord Krishna, they have worshipped all other deities. Akashat patitam toyam yatha gacchati sagaram sarva deva namaskaram keshavam pratigacchati. Thank you, Dr. Hari Om.
Thank you, Vidya. So a very nice and a clear explanation of the verse. We go to Prakash. Prakash, your time to speak, verse 24.
गुरुभ्यो नमः अखंडानंद बोधाय शिष्य संताप हारिणे सचिदानंद रूपाय तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः. Verse number 24 from the 9th chapter Gita. Aham hi sarva yajnanam bhokta cha prabhurev cha natu mam abhijananti tatve natascha vantite. Aham hi sarva yajnanam. The same thing as Vidya Madam told about the finite and infinite. Here, Lord Krishna says, Aham hi sarva yajnanam. In all the yagnas performed, मैं निश्चित रूप से I am the end receiver. It is like a postman. When you go to a post office and you give money and come for a particular recipient, so it goes right to that person. All the offerings and the sacrifices through the various yagnas that we do are actually going to Lord Krishna. They reach them. They are like cabinet ministers, the Agni Devata, Surya Devata, all the Devatas pujan that we do, they are the cabinet ministers. They have to reach it to the prime minister. Am I audible? So it's the prime minister who actually receives everything. The supreme receives everything. For example, if a cabinet minister is displaced and replaced by another person, so where did your offering go? It's all through. They are the via medias and it reaches them. I am the bhokta, I am the enjoyer, he says, of all the offerings, all the sacrifices. Therefore, those who do not recognize this, my true transcendental nature, they fall down from the positions. He has broken the particular shloka in two forms. The aham hi sarva yajnana bhokta cha prabhureva cha. I am the bhokta, I am the receiver, and I am the enjoyer. Natu mam abhijananti. Those are the people, natumam. Those are the people who do not understand me clearly. Tatvena, my true nature. They don't understand my true nature. So Krishna indirectly is mentioning that he has two natures, two characteristic features. The first one is the superficial, unreal nature. The second one is his essential, real nature. Superficial, unreal nature is the physical form of the Lord. That's the Sakam Bhakti which we are doing. And that's the finite form. This form is a temporarily taken form by the Lord on an Ashtami day. Maya Manushya Vesham was not there before Ashtami and will not be there after Swarga Rohanam. Therefore, Manushya Vesham is unreal. Here, Krishna says, seeing my physical form, the bhakta is deluded and feels that I am a particular finite person, but my real nature is formless, attributeless. Satchit Anand Swarupam. Shabd Sparsha Roop Ras Gandh Rahit. Mam Tatvena Nirguna Swarupam. He calls himself a Nirguna Swarupam. Swamiji goes further to tell us a story of a milkman who, with lot of penance and lot of sacrifices, praised the Lord, and the Lord appeared, asked him to ask for a boon. He says, "I'm a milkman, and I'm not happy with my my living. I need a lake. I need a source where milk will always be available for me to sell and earn from them in abundance." So immediately Lord says Tathastu and gives him a very nearby, leads him to a very big lake of pure milk. He says, "This is Akshay Patra for you. You take how much milk you want from here, earn what you want from here, your life is settled." And after he said thank you and turned around, then again the Bhakta runs behind and says, "Lord, Lord, Lord, I need one more thing. The milk is fine. Thank you very much. But I need another lake of water because I use water for my business of the milk." So this devotee is is nothing but belonging to the materialistic world. He doesn't even know what to ask. He's asked the Lord a finite thing and from the infinite source. Shavantite, here the shloka says Shavantite. They all, such people fall into the materialistic world bar janma or mrityu ke chakkar mein. Therefore, because of sheer indiscrimination, we all fall into the sansara. There are many types of yagna performances recommended in the Vedic literature to satisfy the Supreme Lord. The perfectional form of human civilization known as Varna Ashrama Dharma is specifically meant for satisfying Vishnu. Therefore, Krishna says, I am the enjoyer of all sacrifices because I am the supreme master. Less intelligent people, however, without knowing this fact, worship demigods for temporary benefit. Therefore, they fall to the materialistic existence and do not achieve the desired goal of life. However, anyone with a materialistic Mayavi desire also will be fulfilled if he prays for it to the Supreme Lord, although it is not pure devotion, will achieve his desired results. Hari Om.
Thanks, Prakash. Enjoyed listening to you. A very clear explanation. Sachin, your time.
Yanti devavrata devan pitrunyanti pitruvrata bhutani yanti bhutejja yanti madhyajinapi mam. So in previous verse, the bhaktas failed to ask for moksha. Then a question arises that Lord who is Sarvajnani knows that moksha is the best gift. Then why can't he give the moksha as it is? Krishna says that would not work. Here Swamiji explains that there are two reasons for that. One is the human birth. God has given us free will with the human birth. Unlike the animals or other beings who cannot choose their goals, animals are instinctively programmed to pursue certain basic things in life. Once they fulfill those, they would one day die. For example, if you ask a dog in the street that what is his goal is nothing other than he has to just go for food or just playful in the street. He will never be satisfied. He will not have any goals like a human being. That means we as a human being have to fulfill some higher goals in life because of our purushartha and the free will which we got because of the human birth. And that higher goal is nothing other than moksha. God will not interfere in our choices. His role is only giving us the information of that goal that are available and which goals to reach by which path. And you refuse to use your choice is indirectly meaning that you do not want to utilize the privilege of human birth. Thus, you are indirectly declaring, oh Lord, by mistake I have come to this human birth. Please put me back to animal birth. And as you know, God is always willing for you. He would accept your declaration and give you a lower order of birth. That's how you will get Punarapi Jananam and Punarapi Mananam, and it will continue helplessly. So Bhagwan, who is all-knowing, can assist you, but one has to choose for oneself. And therefore, moksha is whose choice? It's not Bhagwan's choice. It is to be your choice. This is one reason that God has not given you moksha. Second reason is, if at all God chooses to give moksha, if you are not interested, then you will refuse to receive it. One cannot give anything if the other person is refusing to receive it. Swamiji explains that when he is having a class and there are no pupils and still it continues to take the class, then it is considered to be insane. Thus, there should be someone to receive the class. Same way, one is not willing to receive, like when God is giving the moksha, then God is really helpless. Therefore, Krishna says in this verse, what you want, you have to choose. And he says, Devarata Devan Yanti. Worshippers of Devatas will get only the results of Devata Prapti or anything equivalent to that. Like worshippers of Lakshmi would get money. Worshippers of Goddess Saraswati would get knowledge. On similar line, Pitravata Pitran Yanti. Worshippers of ancestors Pitru Devata will go to Pitru Loka and get those benefits. A famous Upanishadic statement is Tam yata yata upasate tateva bhavati. Whatever you worship unknowingly, you will become that. That is why in our tradition, we want to give the children noble, because the young minds will be attracted to those heroes and will be thinking of them, and unknowingly their characters will be imbibed, because as you think, so you become. Then Bhutacha Bhutani Yanti, worshippers of Bhuta Ganas, Bhuta, Preta, Pisacha, Yamarupini, Rakini, Dakini, all those and so many who are even worshipped going to Smashana. So these people will end up becoming such black magic like people. So worshipping tamasic deities attain tamasic goals. Worshipping rajasic deities will attain rajasic goals. And therefore Krishna says, Mad Janati, those who worship me, who represents Brahman, Satyam Jnanam Anantam, who represents Moksha, the Purnatvam. So Mad Janati Mam Yanti, those who will come to me that represents the moksha itself. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You finished very quickly, Sachin. Nice explanation. And also you gave us a very stern warning that we have to make use of this human life and not miss this opportunity, because this is a golden opportunity indeed. I think you're the last speaker, Satya, for today. Your time starts.
Hari Om.
Go
The
ahead.
verse goes like this. Atram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati taddaham bhaktyopahartam ashnami prayatatmanaha. Patram pushpam phalam toyam, that is leaf, flower, fruit, water. Yo me bhaktya prayachati, whatever is offered to me with devotion. Tad aham bhayaktyu prahatah, that devout offering. Ashnami prayatatmanaha. Prayatatmanaha is, prayatat is that, prayatatam is that shuddham. Prayatatmanaha is the pure minded one or the purified mind. So I accept whatever is given with that devout offering. So whatever, that is with devotion, whoever offers me a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, the devout offering of the pure-minded one, I accept. Here, Krishna is talking about Sakama Bhakti and Nishkama Bhakti. Likewise, Sakama rituals and Nishkama rituals are also there. Most rituals are done for some result to be achieved, like Putra Kameshti Yaga for Putra Papti. There are certain rules and regulations in performing the ritual. The manner of doing puja, the time, place, deity, naivedyam, all are prescribed in scripture. Even the dress, how many priests, how much dakshina are to be given are all prescribed. All rules are to be obeyed, and if any disobedience of rules are there, prayashchitam is to be done, and this is also described in scriptures. Higher the benefit we expect, more complicated is the ritual, and every action has a proportional result. The more mantras, more dakshina shall have more result. This type of Sakama Bhakti involves maximum number of rules, whereas Nishkama Bhakti, all the rules are loosened. Mistakes are not considered in Nishkama Bhakti. Flower, Naivedyam doesn't matter. All these doesn't matter when our motive is not finite but infinite. Therefore, Nishkama Bhakta or Mumukshu Bhakta, who wants God as a result of his puja, he can offer anything without any precondition. One who worships for Artha or Artharthi is a Sakama Bhakta, whereas Nishkama Bhakta is a person of pure mind, purified mind. He does not desire for finite goals. He is Raga Rahita. He wishes only for Chitta Shuddhi, Jnana Prapti or Moksha Prapti. Krishna says, since he has got that Nishkama Bhakti, I receive that offering even if it is inferior offering, but is offered with love for myself. Krishna talks about means and ends. We have seen in previous verses. If God is the means to get your benefits, that is Sakama Bhakti, and God is not interested in it. What is God interested is when we keep him at the end. So Krishna says, I do not bother about the medium, be it any flower or the leaf, if you are giving me pure love. He accepts pure love through whatever medium a Nishkama Bhakta offers. Here, Krishna has clearly described the superiority of Nishkama Bhakti over Sakama Bhakti. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Satya, for a nice explanation. With that, we come to the end of today's class. In the next class, that is 2 days from now, we will be coming to the conclusion of a very beautiful 9th chapter, where you will see much more beautiful verses on Bhakti. In this chapter also, there are some seemingly controversial verses where there seems to be a gender bias or a caste bias. That is why a proper interpretation is so important. So many people have been put off by the Bhagavad Gita or because of these particular verses. But please go by what Swami Param has said, so that you know, in the study of scriptures, there is no gender involved, there is no other caste and all involved. So otherwise, the 9th chapter is a very beautiful chapter. We have 8 more verses left, which we'll be covering in the next chapter. In the next 2 days, please prepare for them. I will formally conclude today's class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhave. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you for all the wonderful presentations of the speakers, and